Your Excellency, President Duma Boko, Your Excellency, Vice President Ndaba Haulate, Ministers and High Commissioners, and colleagues and friends, I stand on the protocol that we established throughout this wonderfully held BNC. As we conclude deliberations of this session of the BNC, I wish to express my appreciation once again for the insight and wisdom which President Boko has provided in leading this BNC, with me playing a supportive role. He has been our key host, and he has shown great leadership in steering the functions and the deliberations of this BNC extremely well. And I thank you and I congratulate you. The report of the Commission captures the scope of our strategic and fraternal relationship. It affirms that our bilateral relations remain very strong and they are enduring. These are relations that were crafted over generations. The Commission lays the basis for effective implementation in the months ahead, based on the overall agreement that crafts our relationship and formalizes it, and the various accompanying agreements that we are always putting together. The agreements that have been signed today give practical and legal expression to our cooperation. This takes our relationship beyond just a general handshake. It makes it formal between the two countries, between our two peoples. In our deliberations, we have identified priority areas that will scale up economic partnership between our two countries. Levels of bilateral trade and investment must be substantially increased. We must explore more opportunities in agriculture while working together to resolve some of the challenges we have experienced in this area. South Africa and Botswana continue to deepen cooperation in other important areas, such as in vaccines. The developments that you have demonstrated in vaccine production are truly, truly outstanding. We welcome the commitment by the South Africa's Agricultural Research Council and the Botswana Bovine Institute to conclude a cooperation partnership in the production of vaccine to fight animal diseases, including the foot and mouth disease that is raging in our two countries. Mr. President, we thank you and your government for facilitating the delivery of significant doses of vaccines to our country to combat the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. When I visited this morning to the BVI Center, I was enthralled by what I saw. I was deeply impressed also by the scientists who were explaining everything that happens there. Now, I'm a very inquisitive person. They could only show me some of their workings through windows. I wanted to go inside the lab, but much as I'm president, they prevented me from doing so. But they were hard at work, and I could see that the scientists wearing their protective equipment and masks and so forth were really doing outstanding work. So we are benefiting from the great work that is being done in your Agricultural Vaccine Development and Production Center. We are committed to address the challenging issues of immigration difficulties, affecting, among others, students from Botswana and business people from South Africa. We should direct our respective ministers of Home Affairs to develop a sustainable resolution of these matters by September this year, and I know that the ministers of Home Affairs have been busy doing precisely this. Working together with SADC, South Africa and Botswana will continue to promote regional integration, including through investment in infrastructure and manufacturing. We will continue to promote social, cultural, and educational and scientific ties. It is also critical that the region promotes peace, stability, and security. South Africa and Botswana should continue to work for a global order based on peace, stability, and respect for international law. We conclude this session of the BNC inspired by the vision of our forebears who laid a firm foundation for a great relationship forged through struggle, sacrifice, and unity and solidarity. The strong bonds of friendship and cooperation are founded on our shared desire to fulfill the promise of a brighter future for our two nations and for our region as well. We once again express our deep appreciation for the work that has been done by our ministers and our officials who have toiled hard over the past few days to make sure that this binational is successful. We're also rather pleased that we have President Boko, the fortune of having a group of people as ministers as well as officials who are putting the interests of our people ahead of anything else. I was particularly pleased that last night, having proposed that what we had originally called the Lesotho Botswana Water Initiative should now be renamed as the Lesotho South Africa Botswana Water Initiative, which should be called Lesabo. And the name has now been accepted because it properly describes our integration, and that our integration also includes other sister countries in our region, specifically Lesotho. We once again also express our deep appreciation, President, for the warmth and hospitality that has been extended to us during this state visit and binational commission. We were embraced with the concept of BOKO, consistent with the traditions of this great country that is Botswana and its people. I look forward, Your Excellency and dear brother, to hosting you in South Africa for the 7th session of the Binational Commission. It may look that it will happen in the far distance in 2028, but 2028 is just around the corner. You and I are in a hurry to get things done, and we are pleased that the ministers and the officials have accepted that we want to gallop and see real implementation of all the agreements that have been arrived at. So when we meet in 2028, we will definitely be reporting on great and enhanced progress, strengthening further the relationship between our two countries. Ke a leboga, ke re pula. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. I now have the distinct honor to invite Advocate Duma Boko, President of the Republic of Botswana, to deliver his closing remarks. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Happy to be speaking from the left flank. Leftist that I am and have always been. Your Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, cabinet ministers from both countries, Botswana and South Africa, Your Excellencies, High Commissioners of both countries, senior government officials, distinguished delegates, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, I may start on a light and cheerful note. I told you earlier that this word revolution almost got me expelled from secondary school many years ago. And it is because, as a member of the school debating club, we had challenged the teachers to a debate, students against teachers. And we called it a revolutionary roundtable. And we put up, I was the one writing the notices, pasted them on the walls in the school. And before I knew it, it would appear that those that had been listed in the team had received letters from the headmaster. I was the only one who did not receive the letter, and I thought I was free. But my father worked in the same compound where the school was. And so what they had done was to reach out to him and tell him, it was a Friday, that on Monday he must come to the headmaster's office. So when I got home, my father asked me, what's happening at school? I said, no, nothing, everything is okay. I said, why are they asking me to come to the school there? I said, I have absolutely no idea. I had to tell him what had happened. He said, no, we just had asked the teachers to come to a debate with us. So on Monday, when my father came, it was myself and him, the headmaster, and they invited as an expert witness the history teacher to come and define the word revolutionary to my father, so that he could appreciate the gravity of my transgression. And so he stood, folded his arms, and looked at my father and said, a revolutionary is a freedom fighter. This boy wants to overthrow the headmaster. And so that was my offense. After he had provided the definition, he was released. And it was my father and myself and the headmaster. And my father took a hard line and defended my use of the word revolutionary. And he said to the headmaster, you know, Jesus Christ was a revolutionary. Martin Luther King was a revolutionary. Do you have any problem with these people? I escaped, but my colleagues were suspended from school for 20 days. I still maintain I'm a revolutionary. And now I have come to understand what a revolution is, and I draw its definition from a scholar called Perry Anderson. And he says, a revolution is an episode of convulsive political, economic, and social transformation compressed in time and concentrated in target. I am a revolutionary. I am pursuing a revolution. It has to be radical, convulsive. It has to be transformative. It has to be time-bound. And it has to have clear targets. And that's what I would like to recruit all of you into. And here we conclude this productive and forward-looking session, Botswana-South Africa by National Commission. I'd like to express Botswana's profound appreciation to you, Your Excellency, Mr. President, and your esteemed delegation for the honor of your presence here in Gaborone and the spirit of partnership that has characterized this engagement. I thank all of you for the warmth, openness, and fraternity that have defined our deliberations over the last 2 days. It has been both an honor and a privilege to host you in Botswana, and equally a privilege to co-chair the 6th session of the Botswana-South Africa Bi-National Commission alongside you, Mr. President. Your state visit and the engagements that have accompanied it reaffirm that the relationship between Botswana and South Africa transcends diplomacy and geography. It is profoundly human in character, shaped by a shared history, strengthened through solidarity in moments of challenge, and sustained by enduring bonds of friendship, mutual respect, and common aspiration between our peoples. Over the course of our deliberations, we engaged as strategic partners bound by a shared destiny and a collective responsibility to advance the prosperity, stability, and development of our region. Our discussions reaffirmed the depth and resilience of our partnership. We reflected candidly on the challenges confronting our countries and our region, identified new frontiers of cooperation, and resolved to move decisively beyond declarations of intent towards implementation and measurable outcomes that improve the lives of our citizens. In this regard, we are greatly encouraged by the signing of the new bilateral agreements, which further deepen and diversify cooperation across strategic sectors: environmental management and conservation, governance and public sector capacity building, economic and infrastructure development, tourism, transport connectivity, and water resource management, LESAB, among others. These agreements represent tangible investments in the future prosperity and resilience of our two nations. They evidence objective and plausible complementarity between our two countries. The Binational Commission remains a vital mechanism for advancing Botswana-South Africa relations and translating political goodwill into practical cooperation. It stands as a living expression of mutual trust, sustained dialogue, and shared purpose. As we conclude this session, we carry a collective responsibility to ensure the timely and effective implementation of the decisions we've taken. We remain conscious that our citizens, particularly the youth, expect visible progress, meaningful opportunity, and transformative outcomes. I raised the issue earlier that we need to attain some measure of harmonization in the laws and the legislative frameworks in our two jurisdictions. An issue was raised with me which I took up with His Excellency. In Botswana, if a citizen of South Africa overstays, they have been given 2 weeks, they stay 3 weeks. When they get to the immigration desk, they are told, you've overstayed by a week, 7 days. They are told further, it is 10 pula per day, that's the fine. And because you've overstayed by 7 days, your fine is 70 pula. Go to the nearest police station and pay. They write them a note. And they go to the nearest police station, they pay, and they come back with a receipt showing they have paid, and they are allowed to depart. That's what happens in Botswana. In South Africa, if a person overstays, and they overstay when they've gone there to attend to their sick relatives whom they take across the border for medical attention. Some of them are truck drivers, suffer a breakdown. They tend to overstay because they are in the middle of nowhere. And what then happens is they are told when they reach the immigration desk, you have overstayed. You are therefore banished from entering South Africa for the next 12 months. You're not allowed here. Go. And this is what happens. And we want some harmonization so that we enable our people without countenancing breaches of the law, but we accord them treatment that enables this little problem to be resolved as expeditiously and as efficiently, as humanely as possible. This would be the benefit of some measure of harmonization for which I advocate and which I urge with respect and submission upon His Excellency and upon his team. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again convey Botswana's sincerest appreciation for your state visit and the successful convening of this 6th bi-national session of the Botswana-South Africa Binational Commission. May the bonds that unite Botswana and South Africa continue to grow in strength and purpose. May our partnership continue to serve as a model of principled cooperation and a beacon of what can be achieved when neighboring nations choose solidarity over division, partnership over rivalry, and a shared future over narrow interest. I also extend heartfelt appreciation to all the ministers, officials, experts, and stakeholders who contributed to the success of this session. Your dedication, professionalism, and commitment have laid a firm foundation for the advancement of our common objectives. I wish you all a safe journey home when you do depart, and I pray that you stay on a little longer. And I look forward with confidence and optimism to the continued strengthening of the Botswana-South Africa partnership in the years ahead. I have been invited to the 7th binational that will take place in 2028. Now I want to limit my message to a few amongst you. The Minister of Water, South Africa, Majodina, Gwede Mantashe. Who else? Oh, Bantu Holomisa. Those three. I'm going to speak to them not in Setswana and not in English. Mamele ke niphulaphule kakhulu. Xa ndifikayo kwela cala ngakuni ze nindixhelele iinkomo neebhokhwe, nindiphekele imingqusho nezigezenga. Ndiyakholwa nomqombothi ningawenza ke, ningawushiyi ngasemva. Ze ndikwazi ucamagusha ze kube Xhosa kube hele. Nindivile ke, ndivakele. Makube njalo. It remains then for me to thank all of you for the pleasure of your company here today and the privilege of your kind attention. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think quite a number of us didn't understand, but it sounded so good anyway that we shall now proceed to the media question and answer session, followed by the official photo opportunity. May I at this juncture kindly invite the Press Secretary to the President, Ms. Emang Murtapati, to step forward and moderate the session.
The President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of Botswana, Advocate Duma Boko, the Vice President of the Republic of Botswana and Minister of Finance, Mr. Ndaba Nkosinati Gaolate, Chairs of the Ministerial Segment of the Binational Commission, Honorable Ronald Lamola, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Dr. Penyo Butale, Minister of International Relations, Republic of Botswana, also known as CHAMP, Honorable Cabinet Ministers from the Republic of South Africa and the Republic of Botswana, Director General in the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa, Ms. Pindile Baleni. Let me just take this opportunity to say that I would have said I also stand on the protocols already established. But I thought I should just take this opportunity to greet Ms. Pindile Baleni in a special way, because the last time we went there, she really showed us a good South African hospitality as support staff for the President. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Emang Mutapati. I'm Press Secretary to the President of the Republic of Botswana, and I have the honor of facilitating today's joint press conference held on the occasion of the state visit for the 6th session of the Botswana-South African Binational Commission. Earlier this morning, when the President spoke, in his opening remarks, he highlighted and emphasized, among other things, the urgent need to harness artificial intelligence and deploy technology for economic transformation. In light of this, may I take this opportunity to respectfully and with great humility highlight and flag the crucial role of storytelling as yet another element of development. For it is only through accurate reporting, thoughtful analysis, and genuine curiosity that journalists can play an essential part in helping the public understand the spirited efforts of the legislative, judicial, and executive branches of government to transform lives of the people. May I also add that as Joshua Oegara, a renowned East African banker, who sits at the intersection of capital and confidence, observed at Africa Editors Forum News Congress earlier this year, observed, Africa's story is too important to be told unfairly because quality of journalism affects the cost of Africa's capital. And you, the journalists sitting in this room, are the custodians of that story. Proceeding in that spirit, therefore, it is my singular honor and privilege, ladies and gentlemen of the press, to invite you to the question and answer session of this program. The two presidents and head of government have allowed themselves to take 2 questions each, and then we close this session. That means 4 questions, 2 questions for each president. So we shall proceed in this manner. You shall raise up your hand and we will give you a microphone, and then you will identify yourself and your media house and ask your question. Roberta at the back.
Okay. Dumelang. Kibidiwa Roberta Akanyang from Duma FM Radio. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask the question. Just to first give comment to maybe the South African delegation, you have arrived at a time where 2 days ago, in 1986, on the 19th of May, you know, a lot of bombings happened in an area called Mogoditsane, and this was because some of the ANC members had been hiding in Gaborone. So I think the timing of this bilateral meeting, I don't know if it's just luck or it just shows that we do clearly have an amazing relationship. So I think that deserves a round of applause, that here we are 40 years later. In any case, look, both countries, between Botswana and South Africa, I have been making more progress. But I think the biggest concern, especially according to youth, is the lack of unemployment. So I would like to ask both President Cyril Ramaphosa as well as President Duma Boko that do your MOUs do anything at all to support employment, especially youth employment, and then do they also contribute to any kind of skills development between both countries, especially at the BVI? Will we see some South African students perhaps coming to learn and, you know, essentially get skills in Botswana and of course pay for that? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roberta. Any other question? And then before we give the president an opportunity to answer. Is there a hand at the back? There's a hand over there.
Thank you. I don't know if you allow me to ask one question each. I've got one question for each president.
Just ask one question for one president, because we have only 4 and we would like to spread them across.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I would have really loved to ask about the skewed trade imbalance between the two. But anyway, my question then will be towards the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. Sir, there's just been this whole issue being spread by certain South African members of parliament that Botswana hosts an American military base, something which has been denied by successive Botswana governments and the American embassy here. Are there going to be any interventions being made to sort of find out the truth about this? And because this is one of the issues which are bringing a lot of tensions between the two countries, at least at public level, because there's some people who believe some of the allegations that Botswana could be used to attack the union building South Africa, whereas Botswana has always been clear that it does not support attack towards any of her neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, Your Excellencies, may you kindly, the President said we must just finish all the questions. Any other question? Or there's a lady over here? Somebody over here. We need a microphone over here, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tato Solomore from Yarona FM. My question is for both the presidents. Regional integration remains a key SADC goal. Now, between South Africa and Botswana, what barriers still exist and how can they be addressed through this current binational commission? Thank you.
Last question. Do we have a hand raised? Any other question? Going once, going twice? One last one.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Vanessa from UB Radio, and this speaks to artificial intelligence and digitalization for both countries. It's not really a question. There are so many AI startups in Botswana that I know of, including one that I am building, and we have built different solutions that serve to improve efficiency, transparency, and accountability in different BW parastatals. It is something that could be easily implemented into the South African government. And with this opportunity, I would really like to say for all tech startups that are pioneering the AI movement as well as digitalization, to be given a chance to present their solutions, projects that could be very helpful for the two governments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this point, I would humbly request President Boko to proceed with the answers to the questions.
Thank you very much. The issue of unemployment is a troubling one in both countries. In Botswana, the official stats place unemployment at 27%. I hold the view that it is much higher than that. And so it makes for some desperate urgency in dealing with the matter. As between Botswana and South Africa, some of the agreements that have been concluded, and if you look at the whole corpus of discussions, decisions, resolutions adopted at this binational commission, the call is for heightened cooperation, collaboration, no less between our academic institutions where skill is molded and produced. And some of the agreements record that certain institutions in South Africa will collaborate more closely, more intimately, for instance, with the Botswana International University of Science and Technology, BUST. And so our young people who are going through training and education will be able to work together closely in the context of developing academic affinities, but also in the context of advancing, broadening the frontiers of knowledge in their respective fields, so that in certain areas where we have joint research and development, we should be able to see the emergence and development of patents, intellectual property owned by these institutions jointly and collaboratively, which can then move to the production of prototypes in the case of products, and then scaling for market and utilization. And we trust that in the process of this collaboration, this joint contribution to the storehouse of knowledge, our young people will be more engaged, will participate in the front lines of generating knowledge and expertise and acquiring it as well. And they will then help us resolve the trenchant problem of unemployment in both countries. We are going to move from here to the business forum. Businesses need to be facilitated, to be empowered, to deploy capital and expertise in the service of the real economy. In other words, businesses must deploy finance in the service and advancement of the real economy. The real economy being where goods and services are produced. And so when there's this relationship, this partnership between business and government, and capital is deployed not for its own ends in a predatory manner, but in the service of development, then jobs will be generated and our people will be employed, their lives and livelihoods improved. This is the ultimate aim and ambition, and we are hard at work, as we've shown at this session, and we will in the implementation of all the resolutions that we have produced from here. The aim is to generate employment, bring projects, bring interventions that enable us to provide work and gainful employment for our people. Are there barriers to regional integration? Yes, there are barriers. We need to be more connected. We need to facilitate the free flow of goods and services between our countries and the movement of people. And one of the issues I raised about the harmonization, in the context in which I raised it, was to enable people to move freely and seamlessly. The better then to advance trade and commerce between Botswana and South Africa, and in the ultimate instance between Botswana, South Africa and the rest of the sub-region. And so we need to remove all these barriers. That is why we will now, as a matter of urgency, have these one-stop for people border posts and non-stop border posts for goods, where we have a single window, we trace and track, and we are able to have a truck passing through the border without having to stop, so that we facilitate, make it easy for goods to move. These are some of the barriers that exist now. If you go to the border, go to Tlokwe, Kopfontein, go to Martin's Drift, go to Ramaphosa, you will see trucks backing off about 10 kilometers. And that is the very best scenario. Because at the worst of times, it's 40 kilometers. So we need to ensure that these trucks move swiftly, and that is why the issue of a non-stop border is absolutely critical. And we are hard at work to remove all these barriers and bottlenecks so that regional integration becomes practical, it becomes meaningful. The issue about tech startups and artificial intelligence, one of the things that will be absolutely dispositive in your quest to develop apps in your tech startups is access to data. You need to be able to mine data and fashion solutions around the data. And the problem that you face right now is actually one of access to data. We need then to have repositories of data, databases, open source, however we configure them, and avail you access to data that you can then creatively use to achieve whatever, solve whatever problem, make things easy for the ordinary person. But you need those platforms that store the data, that avail you access to the data, so that you can then apply your scientific, technological ingenuity and utilize the data however you please in your tech startup. It is very important. But we also must appreciate that the whole terrain is fraught with dangers. I said earlier, and I quoted Noah Yuval Harari, who says, humanity has been creating monsters throughout history. We now have a potential monster in artificial intelligence. We believe we control artificial intelligence in a very dangerous way. Artificial intelligence has reached a point where now it can overrun. It can dominate us. We've programmed it beyond our own reach. And it has reached a level where it can program and reprogram itself and run amok. These are the dangers with which this terrain is fraught. And so even as we allow you young people with your marauding energies and your abundant talent, we need to be alive to the dangers that you may pose, knowingly or unknowingly. We may actually be creating monsters we would be unable to control. But this is a conversation we must all have so that we appreciate the dangers with which this path is paved. And I'll pass, although it's not my question, on this U.S. military base in Botswana. To the best of my knowledge and my knowledge of public international law, we always say international law, and we use it to mean public international law, because there's something called private international law. Now, under public international law, a state, a government, communicates in an identifiable way through either its president at the highest level or its officials under authority. When there is such communication, it is authoritative. Now, in relation to this U.S. military air base, there has never, to my knowledge, been any communication from the South African government alleging that there was a U.S. military base in Botswana. And I'm speaking at the official level. There's never been. And so often we are called upon to respond to rumor and gossip passed at certain levels and stages. And it is erroneously ascribed to a state when it is actually not communication from and of that state. I just wanted to make this distinction very clear so that we understand that all these assertions and claims and allegations about the existence of any military base have come at the lowest levels of people either gossiping or genuinely misled, operating under an honest but mistaken belief. Now, this honest but mistaken belief becomes singularly dishonest, where clarification upon clarification has been issued. And in the case of our government, of our country, by the Botswana Defense Force, by the Ministry for International Relations, and other authoritative pronouncements on the matter that have stated and stated categorically, repeatedly, that there is no U.S. military base in Botswana. None. There isn't. There has never been. And so any claim to the contrary is either informed by lethal ignorance or, as I said, honest but mistaken beliefs, or downright malice, may actually be malicious, peddled by people who want to stir up confusion and hostility. Happily, between the two countries, all those have not attained the objectives, if any there were, of creating a rift between the states. So I make it clear here and now, there is no such military base of the United States in Botswana. There has never been. And there won't be, because of the foreign policy of the country and how it relates with its neighbors, no less the Republic of South Africa. So thank you very, very much. I pass the mic. I almost said the baton. You know, we won the relays, so we forget. So I'm passing not the baton, but the mic to His Excellency President Ramaphosa. And also I must say, the final race, those of you who saw it, was actually a tussle between two countries, Botswana and South Africa. The finest, the very best from these two countries came head to head. And the one that won, which is the Republic of Botswana, won because it was pushed hard. Every nerve, every sinew of muscle had to stand taut, as you saw Colin Kibina Tsipi surge to the finishing line with the South African next to him. He had to dig deep, summon forces from God knows where. But South Africa was in up to the hilt. And we are most grateful when we push each other this way. And we will push each other to do the very best. So thank you very much, Your Excellency. I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Much as we came worse off, we welcome and applaud the Botswana athlete for having come first and won. Because Botswana's victory is also our victory. We own it, we regard it as ours as well. But we also love competition, you know. It's wonderful to compete, but to compete against a very good and strong competitor, there's nothing that can ever replace that. And I had wanted to say on this sports field that Our integration should lead us to supporting one another in more than one way, and where one country excels beyond another one, the one that does not have the wherewithal to reach that high level must support the other one. We are world champions in a number of disciplines in the sporting field. And when Botswana started surging forward in athletics, I must tell you, each time a Botswana athlete won on the world stage, we said, that one is one of ours, and we owned them. So we are very delighted, because you see, we don't want to share all these wonderful glories alone. We must have a sister country that also is known for excellence. Today I went to the BVI Institute, and I must tell you that I was just hugely impressed by the world-class vaccine manufacturing center that you have here. I had never thought that it would be as good as it is, and today I got out of that center hugely elated that a sister country just across the border is able to produce vaccines not only for itself but also for Southern Africa and the world. So we are hugely pleased, and we buy from you. We want to buy more, and as the CEO said, and we pay, and we want to continue paying you more for good products that come out of Botswana. So thank you very much in that regard. The issue of unemployment, as President Boko correctly characterizes it, it's a huge problem for all of us, and it is given rise to by a number of factors. Of course, the lack of economic growth, which both our countries are focusing on, is one of the causes of unemployment. But one of the causes of unemployment is not so much that there are no skills. For instance, among the young people in both countries, there are skills. There are people who are skilled in a variety of ways. The main problem is the mismatch between skills and what the economy needs. That is one of the key problems. And what we now need to do, and what we are working on in South Africa, is to ensure that we match the skills with production, so that training should no longer just be training for a certificate. We must move from training for certificate to training for production, and get the young people who are trained and should be certificated for the right jobs that the economy needs. But of course, what is really going to drive unemployment down is further investment in our respective economies. Investment drives economic or job creation, and when an economy grows, it immediately starts creating more and more jobs. And what we've been up about today in this binational has really been focusing on economic growth. The various projects, and some of them are quite historic between our two countries, massive catalytic projects, are going to lead to massive job creation. And that is what we need to focus on. As governments, our job should largely be to enhance a climate in which investors, people who have money, can come and invest and create jobs in an exponential manner. And of course, our unemployment figures are extremely high on the African continent, and sometimes we try to dose down the figures, but they are high. Many young people are unemployed. Our task is therefore to open opportunities and channels for young people to become economically active. Young people must be so well trained so that they are able also to create their own companies and create more and more people. We need to enhance the growth of the small medium enterprise sector. We also need to focus on what government does and should do to create channels of employment and training so that young people can get the skills that are needed to get jobs in the economy. That has become our main focus in South Africa. We're focusing now on the key priorities that were set up by our government of national unity, which is create more and more jobs, grow the economy, and strengthen the capacity of government, and make sure that the areas that have shown weakness, like in water, we ensure that our water projects are solid and are able to produce the water that our people need. By and large, we've solved another huge problem that we had, which was the generation of electricity. That was holding our economy back, because for the private sector, or if you like, the manufacturing and industrial sector to operate at the maximum level, it requires energy. We've by and large solved that. We're now focusing more attention on the transmission, so that the energy that is generated either through renewables or various sources of energy, including nuclear and other sources, should be transmitted and should get to the point where it bolsters our manufacturing base, where more and more jobs will be created, where it bolsters sectors such as the mining industry, sectors such as agriculture, so that the agro-processing sectors should be developed at a very high level and create more and more jobs. So that should be the focus that we have. Now, we've got various entities and centers that can enhance the skills development process. For instance, science, technology, and innovation is one area where we prove concepts. I mean, concepts like we saw at BVI today, which can bring in young people who have got scientific knowledge to get jobs and good training. And that can mutate into a whole number of other subsectors of our economy. So the skills challenge will address to reduce unemployment. And that should be the twin approach that we utilize to ensure that more and more jobs are created. But in the end, we should adopt the model that has been used by other countries who become very successful and become world-class industrial giants. Countries, yes, in Europe like Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and the others have really excelled because they're focused on linking skills with job creation, and not just training young people to get certificates. They train them to get into the production part of the economy. And that is what we should now focus more and more. Do we still have barriers? Yes, we have many barriers to the economic integration that we should have. The adoption of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in Addis Ababa was a massive and historic and milestone development for the African continent to begin to address the issue of removing barriers. For instance, tariffs, the imposition of tariffs on our continent has been a massive problem. Now, through the African Continental Free Trade Area, we're now removing that barrier, which is a huge one, so that trade can take place much more easily. And of course, in SADC, and between our countries here in SACU, that in itself has helped to remove a number of barriers, because we've got a customs union that addresses whatever barriers we could have had. But beyond the barriers, there are many barriers, like what President Boko was talking about. the movement of goods and the movement of people. That too becomes a barrier. Of course, the African Continental Free Trade Area addresses that, but we now need to address it through having these border stops, where we adopt technology so that technology can help us to be able to enable goods to flow through our various countries in a seamless way. That will remove that barrier. The waiting queues at our borders is totally unacceptable. And it is just showing how backward we are for trucks to wait for days at a border. I mean, I hear that at the Tlokwen-Kopfontein border, trucks can wait for days, up to a week, even more. The queue is about 30 or 40 kilometers long. That shouldn't be. Other centers of economic growth in the world function well because the movement of their products moves very quickly, from production to market in a very seamless way. So we need to explode into the technological age now and get our goods to move seamlessly between our countries. And we have the strength of being members of SADC, having SACU between us or amongst us, but also having these binational commissions that in the main are addressing all these barriers and blockages. And today, our ministers and officials recorded up to 131 agreements that need to be implemented. And most of those dealt with the economic sector of how we can open up the levers of our two economies so that we trade well and we also open up investment opportunities. What President Boko and I have agreed is that what we must now do is to up our game when it comes to fostering greater investment, greater economic growth, and focus on that and get our officials and ministers to implement the agreements that have been arrived at today. On the issue of the utilization of a so-called base in Botswana, I think President Boko has addressed that. And we don't hold the view that there's a US base here that is on the ready to attack the union buildings. What I do know is that Botswana will never allow any of its territory to be utilized to attack its sister country like South Africa. I know that for a fact. I could wake him up at 3 o'clock in the morning and he will confirm that at any given moment. So I don't have a sleepless night about an attack on the union buildings being launched against South Africa from the Botswana territory. We relate on the basis of deep respect, deep recognition for our sovereignty, and also on the basis of great partnership between our two countries. We've characterized it as a long-standing partnership that predates us, that predates even apartheid, that predates colonialism. Our forebears were dealing with each other over centuries, so we are not about to disturb that. If anything, we must enhance that and make sure that this special relation and strategic relationship is safeguarded and it's uplifted to a much higher level. Botswana is a very special strategic partner of South Africa. We trade well, but we want the trade imbalance between our two countries also to be corrected. The trade balance is in favor of South Africa, and I can stand here as a president of the Republic of South Africa and say, I want that to be corrected, to be balanced, so that Botswana must have a sense that, yes, the equality that we seek is not only in words, it is in deed as well, and we must support each other. We must support each other's growth. We must support each other's development. And much of what we do should be based on fostering each other's growth and development. I end on this AI issue by Palesa, and I don't know whether she mispronounced her name by saying I'm Palisa. You are not Palesa, you are Palesa. So Palesa, the question that you raise on AI, yes, we are committed to developing AI capability in our respective countries. AI is clearly the future, but it is also a danger. President and the Vice President and I, and our two ministers of international relations, were talking about it earlier. It is a danger, but we must develop AI not as a toy, but as a tool for development. We must make sure that AI can serve the purposes of our own development rather than be utilized as a tool. But we must also not fear AI to a point where we don't develop the skills of our people, particularly young people, to be well versed with AI. And to do so, what you're saying correctly, Palesa, is that we need to support young people who are getting into the tech industry, who are getting into digital technologies, so that they help us understand AI. I don't understand AI fully, and I want the young people in our two countries to help us understand it and to manage it, but to utilize it as a great tool for our development. And they have the greatest opportunity. Being the new gen or whatever they call themselves, they should be able to advance knowledge for themselves and for our respective countries. So AI being the future, we should not fear it, we should use it for development, and we should support our various young people to develop their businesses, to make contributions, and to bring contributions, as you were asking, to the fore, to government, so that we are able to utilize technology at a huge scale. And if they don't, we will hold them to blame, because they have greater knowledge of the digital technology world than many of us do. So they must come forward with solutions, even if they are unsolicited, demonstrate their prowess and their knowledge about the digital world, and lead us all into that AI future, the digitized world, and how we can utilize it to develop our economies. So AI is here. We should use it as a great tool to enhance government functioning, to enhance the progress that we seek in our economies. So I think for me this has been a great visit, and I must also applaud the journalists for asking probing questions. But I should say to you, please do not rely on rumors that are baseless, such as a military base ready to attack the Union buildings in South Africa. It is not going to happen. Botswana will never allow it, and I rest on that. Thank you very much.
Answers. At this point, I'm going to call on the Director of Ceremonies to take over.
Thank you, Mama Mutapati. We shall now proceed to the official photo opportunity, and may I kindly request the protocol officers to assist. And at this point, invite the two heads, accompanied by His Honor the Vice President, honorable ministers, and senior government officials to, as appropriate, to kindly come forward for the official photograph. I believe it's somewhere here. I get.
Tsona beso ba e wetsa jalo phuthago ya babega dikgang e neng e buisiwa jalo ke botautona ka bobedi tautona Ramaphosa le tautona Boko ba tlhalosa gona ha gore phuthago ya borataro ya ditirisano tsa lefatshe la Botswana le la Aforika Borwa e wetse jalo ka go sainwa ga ditumalano di le 4 tse leng gore re di bone jalo ba di tlhalosa mo mehameng e harologaneng tse maikaelelo a tsone e leng gone go nonotsha tirisano mmogo ya mahatshe o mabedi go tsweledisa jalo tshololo ya mahatshe o mabedi go e nonotsha go thama ditiro go bulela jalo mebaraka mo kgaolong ya Aforika e seng hela mo papadisanong ya mahatshe o mabedi le tsone tse leng gore ba ne ba di tlhalosa mo tseleng la gompieno Motswana wetso meela gongwe ke bua jalo se leng gore ke ne ke ntse ke reditse ha se buiwa ke botautona ka bobedi ba tlhalosa gone gore ba eletsa jalo go dira jalo one stop border post tse leng gore di tsile go nolagatsa jalo metsamao gareng ga mahatshe mabedi e seng ya batho hela le a dithoto le ditirelo ya ka batlabo ba ntse ba bapadisana ba le mahatshe o mabedi sengwe gape se ba se tlhalositseng ke gone gore ba tla thama jalo implementation committee e leng gore implementation committee e leng gore e tla bo e tsweledisa jalo e netefatsa tota gone gore ditumalano tse leng gore ba di dirile e le mahatshe di a diragala ba tlhalosa gone jalo gore the first midterm review ba tla dira jalo ka ko Aforika Borwa gone mo ngwageng o latelang ka kgwedi ya May ya motsheganong e le gone go sekaseka ditumalano tse leng gore ba di beile pele gone go tšakalla jalo kgotsa go sekaseka tswelelo pele e leng gore mahatshe o mabedi ba e dira midterm review ba e bitsa jalo ka May 2027 gone ka ko South Africa e leng gore e tla beilebile jalo ditumalano tse leng gore di ntse di le teng including tse 4 tse ba ding ba di saena mo tsela gompieno tse dišwa ke yone e leng gore ba tla bo ba e sekaseka jalo gongwe ke dinanko le gone ha ba ne ba tlhalosa gona gore ke agreement on water quality and aquatic species, agreement in coordination of aerological search and rescue services rather, energy cooperation, prisons and correctional service. Meala a re tswela ka tse dingwe tse leng gore bana ba ntse ba di tlhalosa ka bongwe ke yone ya metsi e re itseng gore go na le yone project ya metsi e diragalang gone ka ko Lesotho mme re itse gore metsi ao a ralala jalo mo lehatsheng la Aforika Borwa ba tlhalosa gone gore e tla bidwa jalo Lesabo Lesotho South Africa Botswana e le yone the water project e leng gore e tla be le gone ka ko ke ngwe tse leng gore ba ne ba di tlhalosa Motswana wetso ba di bua mo nakong ya gompieno sengwe gape se neng a se bua ke gone gore ba tla ba tswalla jalo ka AI kgotsa ba tsweledisa jalo ka dikgang tsona tsa tiriso ya maranyana artificial intelligence ba tlhalosa gone gore ba tshwanetse gore ba dirise they need to use it as a tool for development they need to use it as a tool to enhance governance and also to enhance progress in the projects that they want to aspire.
By the national anthem of the Republic of Botswana. This concludes the closing ceremony of the 6th Botswana-South Africa Binational Commission. Lunch, I'm told, will be served upstairs for the heads of state, the vice president, honorable ministers, and our 2 high commissioners. Protocol officers will guide us, and the senior officials, the protocol
re tla go bukhutleng jalo motsamaisi ya phuthego ya borataro ya National Commission ya lefatshe la Botswana le la Afrika Borwa mme ala mo nakong ya gompieno ba tsa gona jalo go ikhutsa gongwe re lebelele dingwe gape tse e leng gore ba ne ba di bua sengwe se e leng gore Tautona Ramaphosa la se tlhalosa ke gone gore sa se boneng bontlenyana jwa bo boneng bogeleke le botsipa jwa bo boneng ko Botswana Vaccine Institute a tlhalosa gore ke ka maemo a ntlha go boele gore mo nakong ya gompieno ba bua ka dipuisano tsa go tshwaragana le lefatshe la Botswana go ka dira jalo yone melemo ya leruo ke kgatelopele e ntle e diragalang ebile a tlhalosa gore it's impressive go bona go diragala jalo to that sister country e seng go pehela ko ntla ga lefatshe ka bophara mme ya motsana wetso e le ngwe ya ditsone tse e leng gore tle ba re ntse re di lebile kana ga lefatshe la Botswana le la Afrika Borwa e le gone go dumalana jalo ka tse e leng gore ba ne ba tlhalosa tse nne ba di dumalana mo nakong ya gompieno mme la motsana wetso ke ne ke bua le ka yone midterm review gore ba ikalela jalo go dira mo ngwageng wa latelang ka kwa Afrika Borwa e le gone go seka-seka tswelelo pele gore ba tsamaya kae mo nakong yone eo mme la seng gape se ba se tlhalositseng ke gone gore lefatshe la Afrika Borwa le tla bo le tshegeditse jalo phuthego ya bosupa ya ditirisano tsa mahatsi o mabedi la Botswana le la Afrika Borwa ka 2028 e le the 7th Binational Commission e re boneng jalo Tautona Ramaphosa a la letsa jalo Duma Boko gore a ba a le gone ka kwa Afrika Borwa go tla go buisana go bona gone gore tswelelo pele ke ntseng jang ga ba lebile tse e leng gore ba ne ba di ipeile pele mo ngwaga mme la motswana wetso re ka re the BNSC it laid a solid platform for deepening cooperation between the two nations mme la motswana wetso ke tsone tse e leng gore re tla ba re ntse re di lebile jalo Duma Boko le eno na tlhalosa gone gore go supa jalo the resilience e leng gore kgaolo ya Afrika le ona mahatsa mabedi bana le one go tswa bogologolong jo ba dirisana mmogo dikgwetlho tse di nnileng teng ba ntse ba tsweletse ka tirisano mmogo ga o se go nne le diphetogo mme la motswana wetso tla ke re tla re emisa gonega re tla boa re kopana gape ga re tla re go neela jalo phuthego ya bagwebi e re tla bo re bona jalo Tautona bo babedi ba itsene yone phuthego Tautona Ramaphosa ga mmogo le Duma Boko ba tla be ba le gone ga le bagwebi ba di-company tsa Botswana le bagwebi ba di-company tsa ba Afrika Borwa ba tla bo ba amogana jalo botsipa go tsamaele a gore ba ka dira jang ba go dira kgwebo mo mahatsheng go mabedi tla re tshwara gone ga motswana wetso re tla boa re boela gape ko go wena ga re go tsisitsa phuthego eo